For some context, I'm an 18-year-old male living in a genuinely safe town in the country. It wasn't too big, the people were nice, and everything was in walking distance. At the time, I had been living in a small one-bedroom apartment the size of a prison cell. It's only large enough to fit a bed, a stove, and a small bathroom. Anything else would have been crammed. Since the start of the pandemic, I've been laid off from my job, which resulted in me falling behind on bills. I had another job which didn't pay much, and seeing as it only got my foot through the door, I decided that I needed another one for a second source of income. As stated before, I lived in the country, so there weren't many job openings around here. We were practically isolated for the most part, and the nearest city was about 15 miles away. I ended up looking online and eventually came across some listings in need of a babysitter. I was great with kids and even had worked with some when I was doing community service in high school. Needless to say, I had met with the parents and they both seemed nice, if anything, a bit weird. I've babysat before and had dealt with many different and weird kids, but this one takes the prize. Matthew, the child I would be taking care of, was 10, which some might argue is more than old enough to be home alone, but maybe not overnight. His parents had mentioned that he was diagnosed with a form of autism, which he may be sensitive to certain topics or activities. They would be going out that night for their 20th anniversary and wouldn't be back till much later. They gave me a few basic rules to follow, which seemed simple enough, like putting him to bed at a certain time. Other than that, the process seemed easy. I'd say right off the bat, Matthew started to act a bit strange and didn't really want to do anything with me. Being the cousin of somebody autistic, I knew how they could get when interfering with them too often, so I let Matthew do his own thing. Throughout most of the night, I stayed downstairs and watched some TV while I let Matthew play in his room. Fast forward to around 10 o'clock. I tell Matthew that it's time to go to bed and he gets in no problem. This was weird considering I thought he would give me attitude about it, but I was glad he didn't. A few hours go by and there I am on my phone with my girlfriend when I hear what sounds like Matthew talking to someone. Not play talking. The walls in this house were thick, so I couldn't hear as to what exactly was being said, but I knew I heard voices. I go upstairs into his room and was surprised to see him staring at his closet, making small hand gestures to himself. At first I thought it was sign language, but he then told me he was copying his friend. Rolling my eyes in annoyance, I tell him to go back to bed and that it was late. He thankfully obeys and goes back to bed. As I'm walking down the stairs, I hear noises coming from his room. I got pissed and stormed into his room, annoyed as hell. However, he was fast asleep. Through my peripheral vision, I could see his closet door slightly open with the light on, and I go to close it when I thought I could see something through the cracks. As I got a better look, I began to realize that it was an eye. I fell back in horror and yanked the closet door open, only to see that there was nobody there. Throughout the rest of the night, I stayed downstairs, texting my girlfriend about what I had just seen. She then goes on to lecture me about how I wasn't getting enough sleep and that it was all just my imagination. However, I was certain it was not. This happened about a year ago when I was 19 and in college. My family and I had moved to an old house in the suburbs of New York. It wasn't anything too special, just your average house appropriate for a family of 4. We never liked the city due to being constantly overwhelmed by thousands of people bumping into you. With New York being the most populated city, we definitely avoided it at all costs. My parents both worked in the medical field and worked very long hours taking care of patients, and with the virus spreading, they would sometimes have to work overtime. This meant that me and my brother would be home alone for very long hours of the day and night. Most people would probably think that it was annoying staying in the house for that long, but we got along well. My brother was 7 at the time, and we always looked up to each other for guidance. One night, 3 of his friends around his age came over to our house for a sleepover as summer was upon us and they had been planning it for a while now. With my parents being at work and not at home, I had to watch over them to make sure everything went okay. All I did was sit at my computer playing video games and checking up on them every now and then. For the most part, they seemed to be chill while doing, I guess, whatever 7-year-olds do for fun. Fast forward till about an hour later, they suddenly went quiet as if a switch were turned off. Thinking that they may have broken something in the room, I go over and ask the 3 of them if everything was okay. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, and I closed the door wanting to go back to my game. And that's when it hit me. There were only 3 of them. I stormed back in, only to find Anthony, one of my brother's friends, gone, along with the window open. At this point, I'm losing my shit, asking where the hell he went. What they said sent a chill down my spine. Oh, he went with the pirate to go find the treasure. He'll be back soon. My heart sank into the pit of my stomach as they told me this. I run outside the house, only to see a man I had never seen before dressed in all black grabbing Anthony by the arm. As soon as he spots me, he lets go and takes off down the road, and I never saw him again. I take Anthony back to the house and demanded an explanation from all of them while my anger was through the roof. They had said a man had come to their window and asked them to help him find the treasure, which of course was a total lie. I didn't know if he would be back or had more people with him, but I didn't feel safe with the sleepover anymore. I called every parent, including mine, and told them about the whole incident. Most of them were shocked, but Anthony's parents obviously gave me some criticism but thanked me for stopping it. Needless to say, my parents were furious, having to leave work early, and I wasn't allowed to watch over my brother anymore. We have since moved out of that house a month later to a different neighborhood, knowing that whoever that was knew where we lived. I began babysitting at 13 to earn extra money to spend on horribly embarrassing things like Fall Out Boy CDs. I would almost always work for my dad's clients and get referred to by word of mouth. I was babysitting for this one family who had a little girl that was 9 and a little boy that was 7. The parents seemed okay, if anything a bit odd, giving me a full schedule to follow and jokingly threatening to beat up any boy who might mysteriously show up after they left. It felt cruel for them to accuse me of even knowing a boy, given that I basically looked like an overgrown baby with frizzy hair at that age. Almost immediately after the parents leave, The little girl starts singing in a creepy, high-pitched voice. "We're all alone now." "I know," said the little boy. "Let's play rape." Looking back now, I know the kid probably just heard the term on TV, knew the word was shocking, and just said it for a reaction. I totally bought into it at the time, wide-eyed and changing the subject quickly. Needless to say, these kids were hell for the next hour. I wouldn't let them watch South Park on the TV because their parents did not seem like the type to allow their precious 7 and 9-year-old to watch a show like that. As soon as I said no, the little girl said casually, "Oh, that's fine. We'll just go play PlayStation in the family room. Feel free to watch it out here." I knew exactly where that was headed. I said they could watch any other TV show in the living room while I made them dinner. The parents had left instructions for me to make them sandwiches. I could handle that. Before I had even got out the bread, I hear a massive crash. It seems like the little girl has broken a glass. A bit pissed, but ultimately with no way to punish her, I cleaned it up while these two incredibly weird kids watched with wide eyes. Dumping the broken glass in the trash, I went back to making the sandwiches. I'm a vegetarian, so while the kids had chicken, I made a simple salad one for myself. Just as I was finishing, the little boy screamed out in what, even from my hyper-village and state as an accountable teenage babysitter, sounded like a pencil mine of pain. Nonetheless, I ran over to the couch in the living room to check on him. My ankle," he howled, dramatically flopping back on the couch. While I tried to figure out how he had hurt his ankle, the little girl slipped out of the room. I was aware of this, but didn't really pay it any mind, focused on this little boy pretending to be in pain. He kept saying, "I went to stand, but it hurt too much, I don't know," over and over until his eyes suddenly flicked to just behind me, where I could see the little girl standing with a smile on her face. Right then and there, he was miraculously healed. Yeah. Praise the Lord. At this point, I was just thinking that these kids were really weird, craved attention a little too much, and probably needed more involvement. Whatever. I was 13 and that $60 was only 4 hours away. I set out the sandwiches for the two to eat at the dining table, went to go get a soda, and returned. After pouring the soda for both of them, I realized that they hadn't even taken a bite of their sandwiches yet. I asked them, "What are you all waiting for?" They smiled. "For you to take a bite of yours." I'm so glad I had the gut feeling to open the top part of bread of my sandwich. Because when I did, I saw glass. Broken glass. Broken glass that I had put in the trash. I stared in horror at the two little kids staring at me with menacing twin grins. I lost it, shouting, "Are you serious? At the very least, you could have injured my mouth. What the hell is wrong with you two?" Instead of crying or apologizing or pretending to be ashamed or confused, these two little psychos began laughing. Not like kids. It was low and threatening. I'll never forget that noise, and my immediate reaction was, these kids are too young to be laughing like that. I called my older sister, who was 17 at the time, cried about what had happened, and she came and took over for me. While my sister was with me, the kids never really bothered us that much, which I only assumed was because she was older than me. A couple of hours later, the parents had finally come, and I spoke to them privately about the whole ordeal. Instead of them apologizing or showing their kids discipline, They started telling me that I was a bad influence to them and claimed I was lying even when I showed the glass. Of course, the kids denied any wrongdoings and didn't get punished. The parents at first were hesitant of paying me, but eventually did. From that day forward, I swore to myself that I would never babysit those 2 kids again. Either way, something was terribly off with that family. I just can't put my finger on it. We left the house with chills after the parents arrived, and I never babysat for those 2 again. They were unlike any 2 kids I've ever met before.